What country has the most exciting economy in the world right now? It's probably not who you think, because while everyone focuses on the US, China, and Europe, something far more interesting is happening elsewhere. There are many smaller economies transforming themselves, growing quickly, and changing the lives of their citizens in real, tangible ways. Most importantly, for some of these countries, this growth looks like it's just getting started. So let's look at three of the most exciting economies in the world right now. Starting with number 3, Guyana. Guyana is a country that, until very recently, few people paid any attention to. Like many of its neighbours, it suffered under colonial rule. First the Dutch, then the British, gaining independence in 1966. But a mix of socialist nationalisation, economic mismanagement, corruption, and political repression led to decades of stagnation and emigration. There was some liberalisation in the 1990s, and modest growth did follow. But even as recently as a decade ago, GDP per capita was still stuck at around $3,000, poor even by Latin American standards. Then, something remarkable happened. GDP per capita has surged from just a few $1,000s to around $30,000, and it's still rising rapidly. Over the past 6 years, annual growth has ranged from 20 to 60%. This is not normal economic growth. This is a country being transformed. Now, I'm about to tell you what's behind that growth. And at first, it sounds predictable. But this story doesn't unfold the way you'd expect. You see, Guyana literally struck oil in 2015, which is usually a mixed blessing for a developing country, because oil wealth usually doesn't just bring prosperity, it can bring corruption and distort the economy so much that ordinary citizens actually become worse off. But the reason I've highlighted Guyana is because it is quite different. Not because its offshore oil fields are some of the most productive in the world, which they are, and not because this oil is extremely cheap to extract, which it is, but the reason Guyana is one of the most exciting economies in the world is due to what it's doing with the revenue. It has set up a sovereign wealth fund. It is investing heavily in infrastructure, and it is attempting to ensure that the benefits of oil are spread across the population rather than captured by a small elite. All of the oil revenues are paid directly into a central fund, held with offshore institutions like the New York Federal Reserve, rather than sitting in domestic accounts where it can be easily misappropriated. Spending is tightly controlled. The government cannot simply take what it wants. Instead, withdrawals are capped by a strict formula, limiting how much can be spent each year and preventing a sudden flood of cash from overheating the economy. And crucially, the system is built for scrutiny. The fund is managed through the central bank, overseen by independent experts, and subject to regular reporting and audits, making it far harder for the money to quietly disappear. You see, Guyana sits geographically right next to Venezuela, which means it has a front row seat to how this story can go wrong. Venezuela is the country that has the largest oil reserves in the world, but it still managed to collapse under the weight of corruption. And that helps explain why Guyana, so far at least, appears to have learnt from it. Oil revenues are being channeled into infrastructure, education, healthcare, the kind of investments that don't transform lives overnight, but can reshape an economy over time. So the benefits may not be fully visible yet, but they are being built. And that's what makes Guyana different, because while it still isn't immune to the resource curse, it is, at least for now, making a serious attempt to avoid it. The next country on this list is facing very different circumstances. At number 2, Vietnam, a country that has become one of the most important manufacturing hubs in the world. A position that seemed to be threatened recently by President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs. But then, something unexpected happened. Instead of being pushed out of global trade, Vietnam became even more central to it. Over the past decade, Vietnam has grown rapidly, with GDP expanding at around 5 to 7% per year, and in some years even faster. Exports have surged, foreign investment has poured in, and millions of people have moved from low-income rural work into higher productivity factory and service jobs. Clearly, Vietnam has been one of the great beneficiaries of globalization, But ironically, more recently, it has also benefited as globalization has come under attack. That's because as trade frictions between the US and China have intensified, companies have been looking for alternative places to invest and manufacture. And Vietnam has been one of the biggest winners. Factories that might once have been built in China are now being built in Vietnam. Electronics, textiles, consumer goods. Production is shifting. That means that even with a new wave of tariffs and trade tensions, Vietnam's outlook remains surprisingly strong. Because while tariffs do have an impact, they don't change the underlying economics. And Vietnam still has a powerful combination of advantages. It remains significantly cheaper than developed economies like the US or Europe, where labor and regulatory costs are far higher. At the same time, it is still more predictable and accessible than China for many multinational companies, particularly those looking to diversify geopolitical risk. And unlike Mexico, which is heavily tied to the US and specializes in areas like autos and heavy industry, Vietnam is deeply embedded in global supply chains, particularly in electronics, consumer goods, and light manufacturing. That gives it flexibility. Companies aren't choosing Vietnam instead of China or instead of Mexico. They're choosing it as well as part of a broader strategy to spread risk, reduce costs, increase flexibility, and maintain access to global markets. So even as global trade becomes more fragmented, Vietnam is not being left behind. If anything, it is becoming more central. Growth is expected to remain strong at around 6 to 7% in the coming years. So Vietnam's story continues to be one of steady structural growth, despite tariffs and global trade tensions. But the next country on this list is something very different. Because often, or probably more usually, the most exciting places aren't the most stable ones. At number 1, Argentina. A country that used to be one of the world's wealthiest, but that has, for decades, been almost synonymous with economic failure. You see, after many false starts, something unusual is happening, and this time it really might be different. After years of stagnation and sharp contraction, Argentina is growing again. The economy expanded by around 4.5% in 2025. Activity is picking up, and exports are recovering. At the same time, the government has stopped spending beyond its means. After decades of chronic deficits, year after year of borrowing, printing, and drifting deeper into crisis, Argentina is now running a fiscal surplus. And inflation, Argentina's drug of choice, at last appears to be coming under control. At its peak in 2024, it was approaching 300%, enough to destroy almost any economy. That has changed. And inflation has fallen down into roughly the 30% range. Still too high, but no longer catastrophic. So that all sounds good, but we have been here before. Argentina has appeared to be on the verge of a new era many times before. What, if anything, is different this time? Well, for the first time, Argentines actually voted for more pain when they elected Javier Milei. They were sick of failed promises. Milei didn't hide what was coming: cuts, austerity, shock therapy, and he won anyway. That gave him a clear mandate to quickly implement radical reform, and he used it. Early wins mattered. Inflation fell sharply. The budget swung into surplus. That brought him credibility, both at home and in the markets. Then, despite all of the hardships, support grew stronger. The electorate voted for more unpleasant medicine by giving Milei better mid-term results and more leverage in Congress, making it easier to pass deeper reforms. That in turn boosts confidence, inward investment and growth. This means Milei's program is building momentum. It isn't a stop-start cycle like in the past, but a self-reinforcing one. Reform driving confidence, and confidence enabling more reform. These factors create an opportunity, a chance to lock in meaningful long-term reforms. And combined with Argentina's new willingness to accept tough medicine when required, they point to something the country hasn't seen in decades: a credible path forward. Because this time, Argentina may not just recover, it may finally break the cycle. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please like, subscribe and comment. Thanks for watching.